Hello everybody, it's been a while since I've done up a video, so I thought I'd do one up. I've got a couple notes of news. The first is good news, which is I now go the whole day without putting sunglasses on or putting my face below a pillow. So my eyes are getting stronger to the light. It's taken me about 2 years to get to this point, but I'm pretty happy I have. In some bad news, my stepfather passed away in November, and which was sad. And the last point of news is me and my dad will be moving in with my mom in April. So we're slowly going through all our stuff to pare things down and pack things up. And my eyes are still quite weak to doing a lot of other things, though. So like reading or being on screens or anything like that, I can only take a certain amount of time of that in a day. I'm still reading slowly through books on my Kindle. And yeah, that's most of the health and personal news. I thought I'd talk a little bit today about immigration. Just a second, I got some notes here. So, I'm a little concerned about the rise of hardline anti-immigrant politicians in Europe. It's becoming a significant trend, and I have some concerns about it. But let me start talking a little bit about another issue, which is the birth rate. Aside from Israel, every developed country in the world has a below replacement birth rate, and many very much below that. And the reason that's a problem is because if you look at it, there's more people retiring than entering the workforce because of that. And if you have that for a while, you end up with a shrinking number of people working, caring for a ballooning number of retired people. And that's not an easy thing to carry, because you have to increase taxes more on the shrinking working population to pay for the ballooning retired people, and also carry a growing government debt. And this isn't easy to deal with. And I don't think many countries or societies are really prepared for a shrinking population. You look at France recently, and they passed the president passed some legislation to reform its pension system. And because the pension system costs like 14% of the entire GDP of France, it's simply not sustainable with a growing retirement population. But there were huge demonstrations and riots and everything against it, and it was very unpopular. And I don't think people are really prepared to deal with the economic realities of a growing retired population. And if you look at South Korea, it's the canary in the coal mine for this, because it's got the lowest birth rate in the world at something like 0.7 children for every woman, which is well below the replacement rate. And they're trying to do things now to try to get people to have more children, but it's not really working. And so they could be facing serious sociological collapse if they don't do something soon. And this affects a lot of other countries too, including Canada. And if you look at a country like Japan, its population is shrinking and has been for a few years. And the reason we're not in as bad a situation as a lot of other countries is we have very high immigration. And this is the benefit in immigration, is we still have a growing workforce. So as much as we have more retired people, we have more people working to carry them. And it's a lot more effective and a lot more tolerable. And this is the beauty of immigration right now, is it's pretty much a necessity. Because, you look at countries like Japan or Germany, which are trying to induce people to have more kids. It may be working a little bit, but it's not enough to deal with the changing demographics. And what concerns me, though, is the rise of hardline anti-immigrant politicians. Because right now, Europe really needs immigration more than ever, and yet it's, in a lot of sectors, is souring to it. You look at countries like Germany, the UK, France, the Netherlands, Sweden, all these countries in Europe, Austria, others, are now many of them have hardline anti-immigrant parties winning like 20% of the vote or more, and even the traditional parties and left center parties are souring on immigration too. You have the rise of what they call the conservative left, is people, they're focusing more on money issues and less on stuff like immigration, and becoming more anti-immigrant themselves. And I can understand some of why that might be happening, because Europe's had some problems with its immigrant communities that we don't seem to have in Canada. They've had problems with, like, in France, they've had race riots in the past because of the treatment of minorities by the majority. You've had problems with, like, again in France, the slaughter of the Charlie Hebdo writers, when terrorists went in and killed a bunch of people working for the Charlie Hebdo magazine because they drew comics that portrayed Mohammed. And we haven't had anything like that happen in Canada. And it's hard to understand without seeing some of that, which is why you end up with some of these people in Europe that have risen up to be to really come out against immigration. And in Canada, I don't know why entirely we haven't had some of the same problems, but I have a couple theories. One, I think, is because we try to make sure we bring in immigrants that have skills and job experience and can speak one of the languages. Ideally, they know people here. And I think that brings in people who are able to integrate a lot more readily into Canadian society, that they don't just become a poor underclass like immigrants are in many other countries. And we've got a lot of immigrant doctors and lawyers and other positions as well. And I think one of the other reasons is just because Canada is an immigrant country. And unless you're a full-blooded native, you owe part of your experience here to immigration. And I think it's just that it's a different personality of the type of person, because Canada is just populated with people who have the type of personality that would pick up, move away from everything they know, and chart a new life in a new country. And it's just maybe just by selection of that, we end up with a population that more readily integrates immigrants than in many of the countries in Europe. We're just not as homogenous. And though with some exceptions, Quebec seems to have a much harder time adapting to its immigrant populations. And interestingly, they're probably the most European area in Canada. And but it's a lot more homogenous than, say, Ontario. And one last thing, one of the things I think points to the healthiness of Canada's immigration is that even the Conservative Party is relatively pro-immigration. And even in the Conservative Party, you get a sizable number of visible minorities running. That we've integrated them to a point that it's normal for everybody. That you get your Michael Chongs and stuff in the Conservative Party. And an interesting factoid is the first Muslim elected to federal parliament in Canada was Rahim Jaffer of the Canadian Alliance, which was one of the parties that became the modern Conservative Party. And I think there's probably an election coming up this year, or there is going to be one this year here in Canada. And every time there's an election, you get some people saying, oh, Canada should be more like the United States, or other people say Canada should be more like Europe. I see the problems that both of them are facing, and I think maybe Canada needs to start charting its own path. And that's all I got to say.